I get shit done, I have fun, it's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking through.
From passion to action, my guest, Lawrence Gervais, is going to be helping us understand what drives success. But before we get there, if you're watching us live, thank you for being here today with us. And if you catch us on the replay, we appreciate that also. So hashtag replay, let us know where you're watching in from. And please like, share, and comment. You never know what message, what one idea could have an impact on somebody around the globe today, tomorrow, or 5 years from now. I'm your host, Coach Phil. I've done all of the promo stuff. Let's get to the shameless plug that I use all the time to help keep this program alive and running. Let me just go make sure I push the right button this time. And hey, welcome back. It's actually is free, no credit card required. You can just go to the website address you saw there, coachphil.ca. Click on the button at the top, get your business growth score. You may be pleasantly surprised. There's nothing to do except for continue doing what you're doing because everything's on point, or you might find there's room for improvement. Either way, if you would like to have a complimentary coaching session because you caught us on the Business Renovator, reach out. Let's do that. But you can do the assessment first and do nothing else after that. Anyway, we're here to dive into what drives success. So from passion to action and what drives success, my guest is going to help us understand what that means to him and how he's done that. Quite an accomplished gentleman. He's joining me today, and he's a very interesting dude. He's 24 years of leadership in the Indigenous relations, business development, and strategic governance. Lawrence has shaped policies, secured game-changing funding, and built powerful partnerships that drive real change. Now he's going to share some of his experience and ideas with us today on the Business Renovator. I'm not going to banter on. I'm going to bring Lawrence up right now. Hello, Lawrence, and thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Phil.
It's funny how people connect, right? Steve Jobs says you can't join the dots going forward. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going to say it is. But you can certainly look back and see where you've come from. And you and I have only just met in 2025. So one of my goals was to thrive in 2025. And one of the ways to do that for me is to find interesting people like yourself. And it was just at a mixer at a local business club. And we were standing around a table having a conversation. And you said something, well, you said a whole bunch of things that caught my attention. But you do something that started way back when. It started with, I think, singing, and then you got into dancing. And then next thing I know, I'm talking to a ballet dancer. So if you judge somebody by the cover, I would have totally misread you. But if I listened and understood what was in the book, and that's why I wanted to have you as a guest on the show, just to let us know a little bit more about you. Not, you can talk about ballet. I know it's dear to your heart. So maybe go back to when we were in the club and that came up. Tell the rest of the world how you got interested in dance.
Well, I think it was, I got an invite from one of my classmates, and she was a Métis girl, and I'm Métis. I grew up in a Métis community, and she was going to the local dance studio and asked me to come and meet her there. We were going to go to a movie, and when I got there, the owner right away came over and said, hello, introduced me, and she goes, well, do you want to be in this performance that we're doing? And we're rehearsing, and I seen this packed room of dancers, and I thought, well, maybe I'll partake in that. And that's when it kind of sparked. And pretty soon I'm jetting off to, bigger schools like Winnipeg and the Royal Winnipeg Ballet School. And then I first landed here at the Alberta Ballet School when I was 15 years old. And that's when I left home to pursue this career. And then it lasted for about 17 years after that, and ended in Toronto in the National Ballet Canada. But I, took class in Russia. I've taken class at the Go Ballet in Vancouver, and very proud to be part of the alumni here and on the Alberta Ballet Board currently. And I actually do take class even as an adult that I just started in January. But it's all classical ballet for me. But it definitely, you have to have the right body type, and I didn't realize that till I was a kid. And it just brought me to many, many places, especially being a boy. The advantages you get are quite. I think the ratio is 1 in 3 boys will make it professional, 1 in 16,000 girls. So there's not a lot of us. Yeah.
I'm reflecting back, standing at that table at the mixer we were at, and once the word got out that you were into ballet and you could do stretching, and you didn't demonstrate to us, but the conversation amongst the rest of us, stretching, I used to be able to do that, but it was kind of funny anyway. It was funny to me. A former client of mine in the Ottawa region has 2 daughters, and they danced, right? And I was surprised that the Alberta Ballet was represented in Ontario. And his daughters, not the same year, were part of a Christmas dance show through the Alberta Ballet in Ottawa.
Interesting.
I didn't know that. And I thought, wow, Alberta's reach is in the dance community is way out there.
Yeah, and that's right. It is a community, and it is a family, and we all take care of one another. I spend most of my time in relationships with other dancers, and how our dance etiquette when we're in the studio kind of leads a little bit to our success. And we take those teachings when we get into places like business. And I personally believe that a lot of dancers could thrive if they go into a business direction once they retire.
That kind of leads me to one of the questions: what impact did ballet and dance have on you in your professional life?
Yeah, I think it's having that schedule. We always show up to class about 30 minutes before to kind of settle in, and usually at the bar about 15 minutes before the class. And once the teacher comes in, we're all standing there at attention, right? Just like you would. And it's very disciplined. And I think, in the business community, we need a bit of discipline sometimes, so we can get out of the bed every morning, create this day for us, and really focus on that, and go through the steps. And sometimes, in order to achieve success, if you might have to go back and relearn some of the stuff that was taught to you. And ballet has always taught me that too. Like, if your day isn't very good in the class, well, then you're going to have to go back and relearn these steps to get back there again, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's humility. We always have to continuously learn.
One of the benefits I get out of hosting this show is that very point. Just in conversations with my guests like you, something pops, you will, or you or a guest says something, it reminds me of something that I already knew, but I probably hadn't thought about or put much energy into it. So I wrote down here relearning, and I'm thinking about how can we help my clients understand that instead of just being caught up in their day-to-day activities, whether they're selling a product, leading a team. They could always get back to the bar. And when you said bar, just let people know you don't mean the alcoholic bar. You're talking about the dance bar. Just want to make sure people knew. They probably did, but just in case they didn't. And to relearn and constant and never-ending improvement. I heard that's one of the things that you've gained from growing up in a community of dancers, the discipline, continue doing the things. Even there might have probably been even times when you go, oh, I got to put my leg up there one more time, and then you do it, and then you're back into the I don't have to. I have a quote here. I can almost say it without reading it, but I'm going to make sure I don't mess it up. You only have to do what you don't want to do until you don't have to do it anymore. And I sense that ballet helped you develop that kind of mindset.
Yeah, and it was always a bit of a stress reliever for me too, because when I was working in the downtown east side in Vancouver, at Main and Hastings, you see a lot of things. And so what I would do is I would work in the neighborhood during the day, and then I would go take class in the evening just to kind of get all that stuff away from me a bit, right? All those impacts. And it actually helped quite a bit. So I was there for about 6 years, and most people only last just a couple years in those environments, right? So yeah, it did help me a lot.
Yeah, I was just in Vancouver a few weeks ago. We drove through that area. I didn't stop there, but it's a sad part of society.
Yeah, the Aboriginal Front Door Society was the organization that I kind of grew and ran, and they even have a podcast that was even on that just a few years ago. Yeah, but they're the drop-in center there.
Okay, so I didn't have room to put this up, but I have it digitally. This is a list of some of the things you've done for the last bunch of years. And I mentioned Steve Jobs says about the joining the dots. There's a lot of things you've done and a lot of associations, not just dance related. I mean, right now, if we look at your nameplate there, you're with Phoenix Energy Services. I made an assumption and thought it was a different company. You straightened me out and educated me. So again, I was reminded, don't judge a book by the sound of the company name.
Yeah. And how I got into the Indigenous space was I went to school after my dance career was over in Vancouver, and it was arts administration. I did a 2-year program there at Capilano College, but it's university now. But there was not a lot of work in the arts, so my skills, because it was nonprofit related, transferred into the Indigenous organizations. And that's when I ended up in Vancouver in the downtown east side. And from there, just, through friendship centers across Western Canada, being the executive director in those, and then running in the Métis Nation election, which, I was able to get in 2014 and did 9 years of service for the Métis Nation. And that's when people started to notice who I was. And that's when I started telling my story.
Through all of that experience and bring that into the modern day world today, mm-hmm. What sort of things would you impart on us to pay attention to as we live our life?
Well, I think it's I think the best thing for me and the best schooling I ever had, because I was Indigenous related focus, was learning from the elders as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And I used to have when I was running the drop-in center at the Aboriginal Front Door in Vancouver, there was an elder there, and he wouldn't start the healing circle until I sat in it. And once I sat in it, he said to me that if you're going to work for our people, you're going to have to learn our stories. And I would sit in those circles with these with individuals that were going through a lot of trauma. And that's when I even learned about residential school, and I didn't even know anything about that. And it wasn't very prominent back then like it is now. But I heard the impacts, I've seen it. And with that, I kind of, it actually made me more focused, and it was the best schooling I've ever had in anything, right? And I think you kind of have to immerse yourself a little bit, whatever you want to focus on, and try to relearn it when you need to, but just keep learning and keep reaching out to those things that you want to be successful at.
When you were in those circles and listening to the elders, was it mainly listening and experiencing it versus telling your story within the circle?
Yeah, I think, when they talk about truth and reconciliation, they really talk about the truth piece. Because in order to have reconciliation, you have to learn it first. You have to, and that was a big thing for me, was the value that I had with that truth piece, and which led to me when the TRC hearings were here in Calgary, and I participated in those as a witness. But you kind of have to sit through it. You gotta, you know, like I said, hear those truths and be open to it at the same time.
And with the company you're with now,
Mm-hmm.
your life experiences, those circles, dance, how is that tied into where you're? Because you have another career now, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I did the ballet, and then I got into nonprofit, and I'm very successful in both of those, and entered the oil and gas about a year and a half ago. And Phoenix Energy Service is a very unique place. It's an Indigenous owned company, and it's a very large one. We have about 460 employees. And my role is Indigenous relations and procurement, because government has percentages that are supposed to be um, offered to Indigenous owned business, like about 5%, I think is theirs. They base it on the population here in Canada. And then your province has their percentage, but that's not really concrete. Um, but industry has percentages in their supply chain for Indigenous owned business. So my job is really, at the end of the day, is promoting Phoenix Energy Services to get in those spaces so we have opportunities, so we can do our work, which is oil and gas service. And so we're out in the field. 460 employees seems like quite a bit to manage, but we do it quite well and very effectively. Chris Callu, who is our president, and he offered me the space. But we, like I said, just all the service that we provide in the field, we'll do that, and have an Indigenous focus, because 29% of our company is Indigenous.
Mm-hmm. What sort of roles do the 416 people have?
Well, our main focus was electrical instrumentation, and it formed in Grand Prairie. That's where our head office is.
Okay.
I'm in the corporate office in Calgary. But we also do compression services, automation, which includes SCADA, cybersecurity. We also have another component to us is safety services. So those are on-site medics, and we do a lot of training even with those individuals that are out there. And then we'll hopefully one day get into some major projects. And I think, being Indigenous owned, hopefully that offer will come to us one day, or an idea that maybe we want to focus on this major project and do that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for us. But we'd also have parts supply. We also sell parts. I should mention that. But like I said, we have a very good team, a leadership team of about 10 of us, and we do quite well in each of those divisions.
It's interesting, like the oil and gas sector, energy sector is a complicated beast, right? It's not, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And I've met because I live in that same area, I've met a lot of interesting people and learned a lot of things. I didn't know that you could bend pipe to do directional drilling back in the early 2000s. It was when I came across a fellow who was with a company that did directional drilling, and he had a piece of software, and I helped him sell it. But I was pretty naive. I thought anything that's that rigid couldn't possibly do what it does, but it does bend, and there's some eco-friendly reasons why they do that, so less negative impact on our earth.
Yeah.
Right.
But I find engineers tend to be very smart people, and they'll figure these things out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, very smart people. Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing what they come up with, and there's a number of different disciplines in the engineering space. Geologists, all sorts of disciplines of the petrophysicists. Yes, there's a lot of them.
Yeah. And ours, our services are mainly to keep that stuff going and going and going.
Mm-hmm.
There's a button, and it has to be pushed. There's electrical, even compression, which when we manage those valves on site, and because there's also safety to that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of governing parties and policies in extracting natural resources. It's not a simple thing to do.
No, no. But we're also Indigenous owned, and we want to be at the table too, as any other Indigenous owned businesses. I think there's probably about 2,000 in Canada alone. We are members of Canadian Council for Indigenous Business. We're also in the Aboriginal Business Directory for Canada, and hopefully we get in this procurement space, which is my role, which we just started at Phoenix anyways.
What are the benefits of being part of those groups for an organization like you guys?
Well, I think it's just the certification space. There are Indigenous who identify, but then they can't really pass those tests, right? And for us, it's a major goal for us to be at the table, but also establish those relationships with communities too that we provide community spend for instance. And so our vehicle hopefully will move the platform even further. And then we even talk about sovereignty as an Indigenous owned business, like what is our Indigenous rights also, even for the 29% that we have working for us and their families, that sometimes we're autonomous to them too, not only their nations where they come from, but even the company they work for.
Right.
Yeah.
Is part of the role of Phoenix Services to help that community develop their skills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have like every time we do an RFP, we always mention that we have an Indigenous participation plan, or IPP is what people call it. And in that plan, it talks about how we go to the community, how we look for people, what sort of division that we have at Phoenix where we can actually insert them and get them the work experience, and then they figure out what they want to do, whether it's compression or E&I or whatever. But just getting them into our environment, into our family is very, very important, and then they'll figure it out.
That's pretty. I didn't know that before. See why I have people on my show. Because I learn things. Go back to what you say, relearn or learn. I'm learning in this case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we have about 200 trucks that go out every day, so it's not like we don't have a seat that they can sit in and actually be a part of Phoenix.
That's quite a few.
Yeah.
That is quite a few. The title of the show, part of it was From Passion to Action. So obviously you're that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. That's what tweaked my interest from dancing to where you're at now. For you, what drives success? That's the other part of the title of the show. We should address that.
I think it's just, having a goal and focus. And I've always been one of those goal guys. I'll actually sit up in bed after I wake up and actually establish some goals while I'm sitting there. Take the time to do that. And then if you don't achieve all your goals, that's fine too. Don't ever feel like your day is wrapped because you didn't achieve them all. But at least you're getting somewhere by even imagining yourself and subconsciously trying to create goals. Because I think that's very, very important. We can say we want to do something, but your body kind of takes over and mind and takes you elsewhere. But we really have to focus back all the time. I want this, and I'm going to go and try to get it.
I love that. I was just having a session with a client of mine yesterday. I ran an affirmation workshop, and some of them at first were going, "This is weird," because I was asking them to declare their self at their future best now, as if it's already happened. So, and a good time to do that is what you just said, first thing in the morning, and have your processes to do that, to imprint it. So there's a formula that I was taught, I times V equals R. So imagination times vividness equals reality. The mind can't tell if it's real or imagined, if it's a vivid, emotionally connected, emotionally charged thing you want to go after. And if we go after what we really, really, really want, we're more likely to get it. Doesn't mean we're going to get it, but think of who you become because you started down that path. Who
Yeah.
would have thought when you were a young feller doing dancing that you would be sitting in a seat in the community that you're working in? That was probably not anything that came into your consciousness as a young fellow, but as life progresses and you develop and learn and get life experiences, the light shines on you and opportunity appears
Yeah.
because you took action.
And you're absolutely right. It's always about creating a subconscious mind. And sometimes what I tend to do is if I lose focus on major things in my life, then I'll actually go to a ceremony and actually get it back and get that balance again. Um, and I think it's always grounding for me, and it's always humbling for me when I'm asked to speak at events or they recognize me and I'm sitting there, or I did the coin toss for the stamps last year, or the Flames come over and they hand me a jersey, type thing, and it's always nice just to be recognized. And
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever lose the title president anymore. People will always remember what I did for the Métis community in Alberta.
I was just trying to think of who. There's she's passed. She was a poet and an influencer, and I should have her quote memorized, but I don't have it memorized. But she said, "People." At the end of her quote is, "People remember how you made them feel," versus any other trait. I'm messing up. Her name is Maya Angelos, but I'm forgetting her quote. Unfortunately, it's not in my stack of quotes. I'm going to put it in there for future reference because it's a really good one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, like business is business, and we're not in a meeting and we're sitting around at a mixer and we're having, a few drinks or coffee or whatever. But, there is that thing, be open to talk to people. I think that successful people just talk. It's all relationships, and they know how to make them.
And that's how we got here today. A few weeks ago or a month and a bit ago, whatever it was, doesn't matter. Just your energy and what we're talking about. I thought, I'm going to ask you to be on the show, and you said yes, so I'm grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. But I'm always open to coffee. So if anybody who's on LinkedIn, just send me a message, and I'll make my way and come and see you, and we can just sit and talk about ourselves. Even it doesn't really matter to me, but it's all about connection, right?
Yeah, connections are important. I'm going to give your company a bit of a plug here right now, though. Push 2 buttons. I'll leave it like that, and let me go get your link so they can see you. So this is your LinkedIn page. It's promoting your company, but your handsome face is on there as well as at the bottom of the screen you can see the LinkedIn URL address. If you forget that, just his name's right there. Search for
almost to 22,000 members, followers.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah,
very cool. So easy place to get connected. Just to say hi. Maybe even let him know where you found him. It was on the Business Renovator, and then maybe he'll let me know, and then I'll go, hey, this stuff is working.
Yeah.
If you were to give some wisdom to our audience, what's something you would share in terms of the keys to success?
Yeah, I think, kind of like what I mentioned before, keys to success is always have a main goal and know the steps to actually get there. Like you're not going to go from A to B quickly. You have to go through 8.1, 0.2, all the way down the line. And if you also don't get to B and you start to fall a bit, to just go back to the 8.1, 8.2 and go again, right? And just kind of relearn things as you go. So then it becomes part of your who you are. And I think that's a really good key to success, and just having a vision. And I do believe that you can achieve anything.
Yeah. Do you mind if I share this quote? This was by the fellow. This Orson Swett Martin was the first publisher of a magazine called Success And one of the quotes that resonates with me is our get-to-itiveness and our stick-to-itiveness. And if you need to go back to the beginning to refine your skills, you go back to training camp and start back all over. When I was coaching, I still coach, but when I was coaching athletes, every winter we'd have a evaluation program, and we go back to the basics, and then from there you would add on other skill sets as players and athletes develop their confidence and their competencies. We could push them in a good way to go to another level. Whereas when they first started, they couldn't even see that. But now we're going to see something that they haven't seen before, and we actually being able to manifest it and present it on the ice. Oh, yeah. I'm a hockey coach. How could you tell?
Yeah. But that is so true. And, our guys, athletes and ballet dancers are pretty linked up. And, we, like I said before, I can go into a ballet class now and take an advanced class and keep up to everybody, even though I haven't danced for 10 or 12 years. Right. And I think hockey is probably the same thing. You put skates on these guys who have retired 10 years ago, and I'm sure they can do a lot of these things if they really put their minds to it. Just the body just has to catch up a bit.
Yeah, it might have to do some physicality to get there, but yes, it's in once you've learned it. I heard some great wisdom from when I was doing some volunteer work at a winter classic in Calgary, the Max tournament, where they had the young midget. I don't know what they are now. I get confused with the new ones, but they were called midget AAA hockey players. So they were anywhere from 15 to 18. Right. And he was volunteering on the girls' side, which is where I was a volunteer. His daughter was playing as a goalie in one of the teams. And he said to me, he was an owner of a fairly large global company here, and he was very humble. And he was telling me some of the stories about how he had a hyper active president who wanted to see things. So this fellow bought a 3D printer and had his teams develop some stuff. And so when the president came around, he said, "What are you doing? What are we working on?" And he showed him some prototypes and it quieted him down. But what he said, the nugget that stuck with me, a bell once rung can never be unheard. Right. Mm-hmm. So going back to we may not be as sharp and as balanced as we were when we were at our prime, but we don't forget it, and we can get back somewhere close to it with a little effort. So going back to what you said, if you don't get to B, go back to A1, A2, and just be patient, because you already know how to do it. To get to where you were before or close to it won't take as long as when it did when we first started. Hmm. That's what I got of what you shared with us with that A to B story. I love that. Yeah. But I hate to say, this is the time of the show I hate. I'm going to wrap it up because I've been told don't go longer than 30-ish minutes. I don't know if that's right or not, but I'm following that doctrine, and we both have other things to do today. So again, thank you for being here and sharing some of your wisdom with us. Maybe we'll have you back, and maybe I'll take you up on that coffee one of these days shortly, and we may hang out at the club even.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. I appreciate that.
All right. Yeah. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Well, if you didn't learn anything from watching this episode, I think your speakers weren't working, because there's a lot of nuggets in here. Relearn, immerse yourself, seek the truth, have goals and focus. And if you don't get there, start again and keep going until you get there. Often when we can't get there, I've heard it's the universe testing us to see if we really, really want what we said we want. So it puts us through these experiences. Anyway, that's my assessment of what I heard today. If you've heard something different, send them our way. If you have a question, a comment, or another guest you would like to introduce us to, we'd welcome that as well. I'm going to wrap this up with a typical way I do that. And I want to remind everybody of this one thing. Many decades ago, I was mentored by a fellow Canadian, and he said, we are wonderful. So the you in wonderful is there on purpose because it represents you, your uniqueness. No, just continue being your unique, wonderful self. Till next time, I'm Coach Phil, the host of The Business Renovator.
I get shit done, I have fun, it's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking.